Let's make the complicated things in coffee less complicated. Here we go. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping back by. Hey, it means a lot that you're here. If you haven't been here yet, our channel is all about getting you the tools you need to make great coffee at home. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe, and then hit that bell icon so that you get notifications as soon as we release videos so that you never miss any of the tools we give you to make better coffee from home. Today, we're going over some things that seem complicated and I wanna simplify them for you. So we're gonna talk about ratios, we're gonna talk about weighing coffee, and we're gonna talk about the difference between volumetrics and gravitronics. It sounds insane. Keep watching, it gets pretty simple. All right, let's do it. Okay, let's talk about ratios in the coffee world. And I'm gonna make this really simple. I don't want you to have to wake up in the morning and to do math. So I'm not doing that. What I do want is for you to be able to understand what you did day to day that might have made the coffee taste different from the day before. So that when you wake up in the morning, you have a consistent cup of coffee. You can always count on having a good cup of coffee. So one of the most important things when it comes to this, regardless of if it's a roast or whatever, the most important thing is your ratios, and not just ratios, your measurements of your coffee. To break it down, a lot of us have scoops that come with, you might have a scoop from a Folgers container you had a while back or whatever, and it came with a scoop and it said this many scoops and you're good. And you got to learn what you liked based on what you did, whether or not it suggested what you do or not, you kind of learned how many scoops you want. That's okay. But there's something that happens whenever you get into this world of coffee where you're actually getting better roasts and you're buying nice coffee and you're actually kind of trying to track yourself. And the difference is your grind. When you grind a coffee, it'll grind it either like fine, like Florida beach fine, which is like a really, really powdery sand, or coarser like a California sand, right? And the difference is if you take a coarse grind and you put that in that scoop that you use every day, and you do a scoop of that and you weigh it actually with a scale, it'll be a certain weight. And if you were to do the same thing, the same amount, the volume, same amount in that scoop with a finer grind of coffee and maybe a lighter roast, whatever, you put that on the scale, it would actually weigh different than what the other coffee did. All because of the grind size. Volumetric measurements all rely on how much space is taken up by something. And gravitronic measurement is all about what it contains as far as like the actual density of what is in that. And when you're brewing coffee, you have to rely on the density of what you're brewing as opposed to the volume. And so when you're making a coffee and you use 3 scoops, if you change the grind from the day before and you use those same 3 scoops, you're actually doing a totally different recipe. Your weight of that coffee is going to be totally different. And so what I would suggest is to move into gravitronic measurement, to move into using a scale. And that way you always know the actual contents of what you're holding as far as your coffee grounds go, as opposed to the loophole of the scoop. Before we had the scoops, and that'll kind of vary because obviously we'll have mounds and we'll level it off and that'll change. We'll have a different roast, and then we actually have the grind setting, and then we have the amount of water we put in, right? So if we track the same amount of water and we measure that, we track the amount of coffee we're using as far as how heavy it is every day, and we do that same amount for both of those. The only 2 things we have to worry about are the roast and the grind setting. Roast will always change because you're always going to want a different coffee. If you have the same coffee for a week, at least you can track it for a week. And if you like that coffee, keep making it. And most likely you'll have a pretty consistent cup of coffee every day by using that coffee. When it comes to grind setting, that's a day-to-day change, and that's okay. That's kind of the fun of it. If you thought the coffee the day before tasted a little too dark, a little too bitter, a little too extracted, then you can coarsen up the grind a little bit. A couple settings. And vice versa. If it was a little too light, if it was like the body was really weak, it wasn't very heavy, it wasn't a very rich cup of coffee, then you can fine up your grind a little bit. And with different roasts, that'll change. But this way, at least it's simpler. So day to day, all you have to worry about is one variable as opposed to all these other ones. And that will get you one step closer to a consistent cup of coffee. Past that, there's a thing called ratios. When it comes to something like a French press or an AeroPress or any kind of press where that coffee is actually steeping, you could say, there's a ratio there, and the ratio refers to the amount of coffee to the amount of water. And that ratio is technically, I would go 1 to 13. That means if I have 20 grams of coffee that I put into that French press, multiply that by 13, and that's the amount of water you should use in that cup. So when I talk about on this channel, I'll say 1 to 16 ratio or whatever, that means that it's the amount of coffee to water. So in something like a Kalita Wave or something like a Chemex, I'll do a 1 to 15 or 1 to 16 ratio, sometimes 1 to 17 ratio, which means if I'm doing 20 grams of coffee, I'll multiply that by 16, 17, and that's the amount of water I want to go through that cup. You don't have to abide by that per se. It's all by preference. And so if you like a more rich cup, then feel free to make that ratio smaller, 1 to 15, 1 to 14. So this is just a couple tips to understand how to simplify your coffee recipe from being so many different variables all the time to allowing yourself to wake up in the morning and just think of one variable or two variables. All right, well, I hope that helped you guys. Hey, if you haven't yet, do me a favor, like this video and then subscribe to our channel if you want to learn more about coffee. Also hit that bell icon so that you get a notification as soon as we release a video so you can stay up to date on all of our new advice and tips to get good coffee at home. All right, have an amazing day. Enjoy your life, enjoy good coffee, and we'll see you next time.